Welcome to another episode of SantorSnakes. On this episode, we are going to talk to you all about snake poop.
Thank you to all that liked and subscribed.
Now, cue that intro. First off, let's talk about how everything that eats poops. It doesn't matter if you're a mammal, a fish, a bird, a reptile. If you eat, you gotta poop. And basically what poop is the waste. So the intestinal waste that your body doesn't need gets pooped out. For us mammals, and dogs and cats and all that, there are differences for us than for snakes. So we have different orifices or holes for urine and feces to be removed from the body, but snakes do not. They have one hole, which is their cloaca.
All called a vent?
Yes, it's also called a vent, and they not only do their reproductive business through that opening, but they also poop and pee through that opening. Most of the time, snakes are going to poop and pee at the same time, and there may not even be any liquid urine at all. It could just be the actual poop. And we want to talk about what it should look like and some ways to help your snake if they are having difficulty pooping. Let's start off with a description. So snake poop is going to have two main parts to it. You're going to have the kind of wet, log-like formed feces, which is the intestinal waste, and then there's also going to be some drier, almost like chalky little chunks or rocks of urine, and that is essentially just like dehydrated urine. It typically all comes out together and stays separated. I know, not the most glamorous topic, sorry, but sometimes that white urine is kind of mixed in with the brown feces. But there are actually three other things that you might find in your snake's poop.
There can be mucus, and there can be stuff from the food.
Now, so like bones, fur, or feathers if you feathered a bird. And then that last thing that you might find with a poop from a snake is actually just some liquid urine in addition to the formed poop. Some other things to look for would be obviously the color of it. Is it normal? And as you have your snake longer and longer, you know what is normal for your snake. And obviously if you see any changes in the poop when you have not changed what you're feeding it, then that's something to be concerned about, and that may require a vet visit. But it's obviously typically brownish in color, it's typically wet, but you could have some more greenish tones to it. The white urate could be to the yellowish tones, things like that. So there are some variations, and obviously that depends on the species of the snake and what you're feeding your snake, and obviously it will change if you change what you are feeding your snakes.
And if you see any red, that means it's bleeding from the inside, and you should get it to go to the doctor.
Yes, if you see any bright red, go ahead and make a vet appointment. Snakes do not poop as often as mammals because snakes don't eat as often as mammals. If you have a dog or a cat at home, they're obviously pooping probably a couple of times a day every day, and honestly you should be too. But snakes eating only once a week or maybe once a month, just depending on the size and age and species of snake, that may be all that they poop. Typically if you feed your snake once a week, then it should be pooping once a week. And we've actually had fantastic luck with our snake Princess with that. Doesn't matter, 4 days after we feed her, she is good to go with poop every time. Our ball pythons, on the other hand, are a little trickier, and it seems to be pretty common for ball pythons to do that. They can go a couple meals without pooping. They just kind of hold it in there. It's just seems to be the way of it.
And sometimes snakes won't poop when they're about to shed the skin.
It's true. I think it was Raina that one time, even as the shed was coming off of her, pooped inside her shed. Yeah, pretty easy cleanup, but we couldn't keep that shed.
Funny.
An uncomfortable thing about snake poop has got to be the smell. I mean, if you are not a snake owner yet, just be warned. Snake poop is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And obviously, the bigger the snake, the bigger the poop, and
the worse the smell.
Worse the smell. Oh, yeah, you've been warned.
If your snake has not pooped in a while, it might be constipated.
And constipated means that the poop is not able to pass through the snake's intestinal system fully and normally. Snakes typically get constipated for one of two reasons, and those two main reasons are that they are dehydrated or the humidity is too low. They can get constipated if the overall temperature is too low or if the meal that they've been fed is too large.
If your snake is constipated, here are some ways you can help it go to the bathroom.
Okay. So when a snake is constipated, it obviously is having difficulty pooping, and the first thing that you can do is just put it in a little bit of water. It doesn't need to be fully submerged, but it needs to just take a little soak. And you don't want that water to be too hot. If it feels warm to you, then
it's hot to them.
It's hot to them.
Today is super windy.
Yes, it is. A soak in some lukewarm water for about 30 minutes is typically enough to help the snake relieve itself. If the water in the tub where you've put the snake to soak is deep enough, you may want to add a heavy piece of decor, whether it's just a rock or some other kind of solid piece that they can wrap themselves around and just feel more secure in that water. Some snakes really struggle and have a stressful reaction to being put in water like that. If soaking doesn't work, then you can actually do a light massage on the snake's belly. And when we say light, we definitely mean light. You don't want to put a lot of pressure.
Super soft.
Just super soft, and just kind of massage it through. And even before you do a massage for the snake, the next thing that I would try would just be kind of hand over hand movement with it. Just get it out of its enclosure and just play with it. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Have a towel ready. Don't sit on your nice furniture.
No.
Just in case. But just that extra movement may get things moving.
Yeah, and you don't want to sit somewhere where it's super expensive. You want to sit somewhere where it's okay if it gets dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's best to prevent constipation in the first place.
Exactly. So if you can prevent constipation, then you don't have to worry about assisting to give the snake relief. So what you can do to prevent constipation, obviously, is to raise that humidity a little bit and to make sure that the snake is not dehydrated. we feed frozen thawed, and typically with a frozen thawed feeder, that animal has lost some of its moisture. So the way that we kind of counteract that is we soak the food item in warm water to help thaw it out and warm it back up. So then there's that extra hydration for the snake. Obviously, keeping the humidity levels at the proper point is very, very important, but you may want to raise it just a little bit if your snake is showing signs of constipation.
Yes. Another way to prevent constipation is to add 2 water bowls.
Right, so you can put 2 water bowls on the cool side, maybe 1 water bowl on the cool side and 1 on the warm side. The one on the warm end will also obviously raise the humidity a little bit too, so giving them more opportunities to find clean fresh water and raising that humidity is a good thing. But with the water, you want to make sure that it is clean. It needs to be clean. It needs to be fresh. You can't just leave the water in there for a full week. You've got to change that water often.
Yeah. Maybe 5 times a day.
5 times a day?
No. 1 time every 5 days, I meant.
Something like that. Just change it every other day, every 3 days. If your constipated snake is not able to relieve themselves, then it goes from just being constipated to having an impacted bowel movement. And the impaction is definitely something that is not good. It may require a vet visit. It may require surgery to remove that fecal matter. But anything you can do before it becomes an impaction is definitely easier, cheaper, and better for the snake overall. Snakes do die in the wild and unfortunately also in captivity from impaction complications. They can become septic and die of infections without proper treatment.
And that is bad.
Some people believe that once a snake or other reptile has pooped their last meal, that they are ready for their next meal. We tend to disagree with that just because we feel like you're going to end up with an obese snake if you feed your snake every time right after it poops. You want to stick to a good schedule and watch the weight of the snake. Make sure you're not overfeeding, but also make sure that you're not underfeeding. The more you interact with your snake, the longer you own snakes, the more you know. Please don't take what we say as the golden rule. Please look for other sources of research as well. But know that a healthy, regular poop is a very good thing for your snake. So the size of the meal that the snake has been given can definitely affect how it poops. A larger meal means slower digestion, and slower digestion means that the snake's body is going to absorb more moisture from that meal. More moisture being removed means a drier, harder, more compacted feces, poop, and that may mean that it's harder for the snake to relieve itself. So please be mindful of the size of meal that you're giving your snake, and if they are showing signs of constipation, maybe try a smaller meal for the next couple of times and see what happens. We really appreciate you guys watching. We hope you learned something, and thank you very much.
Thank you all for learning with us.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
Are we done?
I think we're done.
Yes, I'm stopping this.